Hey everybody, and welcome to my in5 series where I cover a topic in about 5 minutes. I keep getting a lot of questions about the SP404 Mark II versus the P6. Which one should I get? Is one better than the other? And there are so many differences between them that it's kind of hard to say, but there's also a lot of similarities. So let's just kind of start on things that are very similar. I would say they are both, because of the way that the USB-C has been implemented on both of these, they show up on your computer as a class-compliant audio device, and they continue to function as the device itself. So you can route audio in and out. You can use it as an effect loop. You can do all kinds of like really cool stuff with either of them. So I would say just from that standpoint, I kind of put it in the Swiss Army knife category for both of them in a lot of ways. They can play stuff from the pads. They got like some pattern sequencers. So if you need to just do some quick sequencing work, you need to run them as an effect loop, any of that kind of stuff. Or if you just need like an emergency audio interface, they will hook up to plenty of computers, iPads, phones, or other gear that you've got and serve that purpose quite well. They also overlap for effects quite a bit. I would say the SP404 Mark II, I want to say it's around like 45 or 46 effects on it, quite a lot. The Roland P6 here, you've got, what is it like? I think it's the 5 plus your 16 MFX or whatever it is. So it's around like 20. I would put this in like kind of the most utility and some of the best of effects that the SP404 Mark II has. It doesn't really kind of go out its own way. Anyway, I think just from a connectivity standpoint and just kind of how they function for a number of things, they're very similar. Now, I wrote down on my notebook here a bunch of things that I would kind of say are like some of the differences. The first thing I would say of note is you have, what is it, 16 minutes of sample time per pad as a maximum. So it's like 185 or something megabyte file that you can do per pad. If you're looking to record backing tracks or you just want to record sessions as you're practicing, the SP404 Mark II will absolutely do this for you. Like you can just hook line in or mic, get the mic guitar port on the front, hook it up to your USB to the computer. You just let it go and just kind of record. Obviously, once it fills up the slot, it's going to stop recording. You might need to go back in and start another recording. But if you're just being mindful of that, this is a great way to just either, as I said, you can record backing performances or play backing tracks, do any of that stuff. On the flip side, the P6 can only record each slot 3 seconds of sample time. That is stereo. And if you convert it to record in at mono, that'll get you 6 seconds at the highest quality. But 6 seconds still isn't a whole lot. It does some tricks where you can start going into a lo-fi recording mode and degrade the sample quality all the way down to, I think, like 11.1 or 11.05 kilohertz, which gets you, what I think in mono at the lowest sample time, it gets you 24 seconds of sample time. Can be a really nice effect, but if you're looking for high quality samples and you need anything longer than 3 seconds in stereo, the P6 is not probably going to do it for you. Next up, I would say just from a charging and powering standpoint, a thing to know, the SP404 Mark II, you can power it by USB, although it requires, I think it's, is it 1,000 milliamps or is it 2,000? It requires something like a iPad or something that like a computer can power it, but you're really best off powering it from the wall wart on the back, or you can do batteries in here. It takes 6 AA's. I think I've been getting with my rechargeable batteries like 3 to 4 hours roughly of usage out of it, somewhere around there. I don't know if like the CPU you can push it. I haven't like really tried a stress test to see like what's the smallest amount of time that you can get out of the batteries, but I would say like I feel like I can get 3 to 4 hours of battery power, which is pretty decent. The P6 is can be powered over USB, no problem. It also has a internal battery in it that's rechargeable, and I don't know, I just found like it didn't last more than like 2 or 3 hours. And I felt like I was having to go back and recharge quite frequently. I did open it up. I did a live stream that I soldered in and replaced the battery from, I think it's like an 850 milliamp hour battery to a 3000 something. So I get closer to like 8 or 10 hours, which has been plenty for me. Like I can just grab this, throw it in my backpack, or just take it with me and have fun with it. It doesn't take up that much space, whereas I'd say like it's probably about one sixth the size of the SP404 Mark II. So size wise, quite a difference, obviously. I mean, even just like layering it on top, like you could have three, and the SP404 Mark II is probably twice the thickness. So yeah, I would say like one of the first early considerations I would have is like, how are you powering this thing, or do you want to upgrade the battery? Requires a little bit of soldering skill or a friend with some soldering skill, but it's not too hard. The pads on the SP404 Mark II are velocity sensitive, which is super nice when you're trying to do a lot of expressive playing here. There's a few different ways that you can get expressive. You can turn gate on and off. If you've got gate on, it allows you to control how long a sample will play for, and the velocity will allow you to, also like play at different levels, so you can make it softer or louder. And that's not even taking into consideration using like some of the effects and control knobs to kind of give some even additional expression. So I would say SP404 Mark II, although it's still missing some expressive features that I would look for, like the MPC or something, it is quite a bit more expressive than the Roland P-6, just from playing it as an instrument without having to have like an external keyboard or something. Because on the P-6, the problem is these pads are not velocity sensitive, and neither are these little pads on the bottom that allow you to do your step recording. And which means you can get the velocity programmed in here, but you're going to have to go per step and then go adjust the volume and velocity for each step. So it can get very menu divey when you're trying to come in and control what the velocity is for each step, whereas you'll have to play it live on the Roland P6 here, or the Roland SP404 Mark II, but you can go through and play it live. There also is a 16 velocity mode that is super handy versus the fixed velocity that you can do on the SP404 Mark II. So you can come in and with 16 velocity, we can play very soft. We can play like a consistent amount. But you can kind of play the 16 levels here and have some fun. I do wish that the 16 levels was more similar to the MPC, where you could also do tuning and some other things. But I mean, we got chromatic mode, which is okay. And speaking of which, chromatic mode on the SP404 Mark II allows you to pitch up basically 1 octave up and 1 octave down. So it gets you to about a 2 octave range that you are able to work with for a single sample. Whereas on the P6 here, you can go up or down up to 5 octaves, which gives you a much, much larger range that you can work with to play a sample. Excuse me. The problem, though, is when you're getting into either of these, you can only play in this kind of chromatic mode one sample at a time. That is true for the P6, and it is true for the SP404 Mark II. So when I go into chromatic mode, it's going to take whatever the last sample I played was, and I can play it chromatically. And again, I can only go up or down an octave here, kind of a bummer. Whereas I've got here piano. If I hit the keyboard button, it's going to just do whatever the top 1 through 6 pads that are selected. But you can see here, I can go octave down pretty low. And also go pretty high. So we've got, sorry, I guess I said 5. No, we go up 5. Can we go down 4? Anyway, it's like a 9 or 10 octave range. It just blows what you can do with the SP404 Mark II out of the water, regardless. So, yeah, you got plenty of space to play a single note from like an external piano or whatever you'd like. It will respond to an external keyboard with velocity and all that. Similar to the SP404 Mark II will, but you are stuck with your 2 octave range no matter what on the SP404 Mark II. You cannot break out of that octave range without resampling and then creating multiple pads that will have all of the velocity range that you want. What do we have here? Next up, yeah, for patterns, the SP404 Mark II allows you to do from 1 bar up to 64 bars. And so you get very long patterns, but they're not, I would say they're not like super interesting. You can't, there's no probability for them. There's no way to tell a step to play every fourth time or third time or anything else. So you end up with patterns that are going to pretty much, I've done a few things for goofy stuff you can kind of do to break some of these things, but by and large, whatever you play is what's going to get played again on subsequent repeats, unless you're going to come in and start changing things from the control knobs, playing effects or other thing, doing other things of that nature. On the P-6, however, we can do up to from 1 to 4 bars. So it's definitely less, but you can have probability on each step, but you have to go menu dive to go make that change. So you can get in and say, I want this specific note to play 50% of the time. You can add in like similar to some other gear, like step components, where you can also say like, play this note every fourth time or whatever. But again, you have to go into the menus here and menu dive to go make that change. Can be really slow and time consuming. On the flip side, if that's what you're looking for, you're going to get I think you're going to get a much better pattern programming generative experience out of the P6 than you will out of the SP404 Mark II. What else do we have? Oh, I kind of went over this already, but yeah, the SP404 Mark II has plenty of effects. You've got well over 40. As I said, it's like 45 or 46 effects. Bus 1 and Bus 2 have the majority of the effects. If I hold down MFX here, you'll see we got 16 on this page, 16 on this page, so we got 32. Plus, if I hold down the last button, you can see we've got another 10. So we've got 42 effects already right here. And there's a few extra effects that are hidden, maybe not hidden, but they're only in the external source menu. So if we go into input settings, you can see here, we've got auto pitch. So you can do some pitch correction if you want. You've got a vocoder if you want to have a vocoder. And I forget if harmony is unique or not. I don't think it is, but we also have a guitar amp simulator. So if you're looking to just use this as a guitar effects box, you can basically get up to 5 effects because you can route from ext source coming in. So your mic input line in, you've got that. You've then got bus 1, bus 2, bus 3, and bus 4. And you can line all of those up so you can get up to 5 effects. So, if you're a guitar player, for example, or you're just looking to do sound design, you can do an incredible amount of sound design on the SP404 Mark II. On the flip side, on the P6, it technically has 3 effects, but the way they work is one is going to be effects similar to what the SP404 Mark II has. So you got your MFX slot or your bus effects slot, and then you've got 2 additional effects. But those 2 effects are both hard-coded. One is a delay, you cannot change it, and the other one is a reverb, and you cannot change that. So there's like a few settings that you can adjust the time and the size, like the timing for the delay. You can kind of adjust the size of the reverb for like how much reverby it is, but you cannot route the delay into the reverb or the reverb into the delay. I suspect this was done so that we don't get feedback loops, but the P6, it's kind of it's much more limited from a sound design perspective, or if you want to do sound design, you're going to be forced to resample over and over and over again to get multiple versions created of that effect, whereas you could just create one long chain in the SP404 Mark II and be done. So, it's a little bit of a bummer, but it's, again, this is like 1/6 the size of the SP404 Mark II, so you can't ask it to do quite so much. In the effect space, one thing that's very nice about the SP404 Mark II is we can do a ton of automation through like MIDI control, like MIDI CCs. We can do control changes on all 5 of your effect buses from an external device. So you can have a much better sequencer that will allow you to control all the knob adjustments, make changes, and things like that, play notes. It is a pretty fully featured set of options for what you can do on the SP404 Mark II to control from an external unit. There's a few things that I think are a little bit bummer, like it does not read your control knob changes. These do not get sent to the sequencer. So if you want to record them inside itself, you can, but it's called motion record. The problem is it will only motion record the first 3 knobs, and we have plenty of effects that if you hold down value, there's a second page of knobs. These cannot be motion recorded, at least since the last time I checked for 4.04, I think. I don't think they made the change in 4.07 to allow you to motion record all 6 knobs. So a little bit of a bummer, but you can use an external sequencer to automate to whatever level you'd like for the most part. The P-6, on the other hand, while you can do some external MIDI controls, it's not as like full featured. So you cannot take your MFX or your effect bus and automate turning it on or selecting a different effect or changing things with the latest firmware. I think I'm on like 1.02 or 3 or whatever it is that Roland released. It doesn't allow you to send MIDI CCs, and I've tried sending all kinds of stuff to it just to see if I get it to work. It does allow you to do, though, however, a lot of automation on the Granular Synth, which is quite nice and a handy feature. And but however, I would say I put the Granular Synth in here as a nice to have, not like a must have for me. Like it's got 4 notes of polyphony. It's not bad. It will allow you to kind of do some quick granular stuff, but it's not going to compete with any of like the high end granular synths that exist out there, or things that you might be able to run on your computer or iPad. It just doesn't have enough. It doesn't quite have enough to just put a ton of grains out there and make like really deep, lush things. I'd say it's a quick, nice sound design tool for me. If anybody's like using it deeply, I should probably look out and see what other people are doing. But for me, I just haven't I've loaded it up a few times, been like, yeah, it's kind of nice. And I haven't hit anything where I'm like, wow, this is like a killer feature. That is nice. Now, a thing that the SP404 Mark II has, it does not have a granular synth, but it's shift and record settings. It has the sound generator. So it does have in here some like what I would consider as like single cycle waveforms. I don't know how they coded it up. I don't know if it's an algorithm or if they just have like some single cycle sine waves or whatever, but you've got a pretty good selection of like sine, cosine, saw, triangle, pulse, noise. So you can generate within itself a lot of interesting sounds and route it through your bus effects and get all kinds of cool sounds out of it going. So like it does allow you to do a lot of quick sound design work and be standalone. If you just want to make a SP404 Mark II only set of sounds, you can resample as much as you want and get all kinds of cool sounds. Speaking of resampling, the SP404 Mark II does have a couple things that make it nice, because like I just played that sound generator, and let's say I've exited out and I forgot about it. Well, I don't think I have skip back on right now, but we have 2 things. Oh, I do have skip back on. Well, you've got skip back or you've got a looper. With skip back on, we can zoom in here, and it keeps like, as long as you put in like the long mode, I think it's, what is it, like 20 something, no, 40 seconds of buffer. This makes the SP404 Mark II something that's like super easy to put end of chain, where you can just leave it at the end of what after you've been doing your work on your music. And if you just happen to have a happy accident that you need to capture, if it's going through your sound, your skip back buffer, you'll just be able to come in and like as long as you catch it within like that 40-ish second time mark, you'll get it. And you can come back, you can write this out to a pad and have fun. There is also, if you hold shift and mark, no, is it? No, shift and enter, that's right. Shift enter will allow you to switch between the skip back buffer and the looper. So it's the same button where you get mark, But there is a looper on here as well. You can get up to 19.4 seconds of looping time. I've documented a few ways to get at it. Right now it says 16 seconds max, but it actually, you can go a little bit further if you get your BPM settings just right. It will let you extend out further. And the looper to me is pretty nice. It's not a best feature. I wish they had a little bit of a better way to dump out from the looper into a pad and let it seamlessly keep playing. That you have to kind of do some process work yourself to make that work, which is a little bit of a bummer, but I don't know. I actually like having the looper here because it allows you to take some of the things that you've been playing, record it into the looper, and know that you're going to have some nice loops going along with a metronome that you can play to. The P-6, it does have a metronome, but to record, it's a little bit more of a involved process to get a metronome going and be able to play to it and record into the looper, because there's not, I'll just say, it's not really a great way to do it. What else do we have here? I'm not even like halfway through this list. This video is going to be like super long, which I apologize, but hopefully this information's all useful for you guys. The SP404 Mark II, it has, if we go into, actually, it's shift and envelope. The envelope, we have an attack, hold, and release. So most people are probably familiar with the ADSR, attack, decay, sustain, and release. It's going to, the attack, hold, and release, a little bit more basic. You're basically, it's going to go up, it's going to hold, and then release when it comes back down. It's fine, but I would say if you want to get more complicated, you're probably going to play a note. You're going to use your control knobs through an effect that you can control the volume with and do it manually. It can be a little bit of a pain and a little bit of a hassle, but man, I'm making all kinds of changes here. Whatever, it's fine. Anyway, the attack, hold, release, it's okay. It is linked to the length of your sample. So if you have a very short sample, this means that you can't take like a single cycle waveform and throw it in here and get a nice smooth synth out of it. It doesn't work the way that you want it to. That said, I mean, so basically you have to like take that single cycle, record a very long chunk, and then you can start doing attack, hold, and release, but it's not a great experience. On the P6, however, we have the ADSR. It is not linked to the length, so you can actually load in single cycle waveforms and get a much better experience with it. The other thing that's really nice on the P6 is we've also got a envelope for filter and pitch, so you can do some pretty fun things operating the P6. You get a lot more. I'd say this is a much better short, like one-shot sound design system, whereas here, so if you're looking to do some sound design, do like some synth or sample work, P6 is great for this. And with the extra knobs in here and everything, it makes it pretty easy to get in and reduce the amount of menu diving you have to do, because a lot of the things, I mean, you got pitch, start, end, and level, you immediately have some like really handy features to work with. Whoops. Let me hit the sample button. It does have a mic on it, which is also nice. No mic on the SP404 Mark II, so if you want to record things on the SP404 Mark II with a microphone, you need to bring your own mic. This has not a great mic, but I'd say it's pretty decent. Anyway, yeah, if you hold down Shift, there's a lot of these buttons also, or the knobs, have a lot of sub functions that you can get at for doing sound design. So plenty of like, you might have to memorize a lot of this stuff, but plenty to work with and get done. I'm not saying like it's better or worse than the SP404 Mark II. It's just different is the thing. As far as chopping goes, I would say you can chop up to 16 notes or 16 slices on the SP404 Mark II. With the display, it's a lot easier to work with in getting those slices. On the flip side, on the P6, you can do up to 64 slices, and it has kind of this auto chop where you hit the sample button, it will wait for the next sound, then you can record it, then you tell it you're ready to record the next sound. So if you're like trying to record drum kits or something, which I've got quite a few drum kits on here from various sources, getting drum kits on the P6 and working with them, super easy, super handy. Although, again, because you only have 3 seconds of sample time, it is, how do I want to put this? It is, depending on how much you like the lo-fi or reduced bitrate sound, will depend on how much you like the P6 here. Because you're going to have to do a lot of filter work to kind of help reduce the artifacts, but then you're changing the tone and character of that drum kit. But I like it. I think there's plenty of good uses for it, and you can get some pretty cool sounds out of the P6 that would be pretty hard to get out of the Roland SP404 Mark II. Let's see. As you can easily tell, we've got, just from a control standpoint, we've got 3 knobs versus the 7 here for controls. I think that, like, it just shows to me why Roland kind of, I think, handicapped themselves to some extent by only having the 3 knobs. Just having these extra knobs, it just shows on the P6 how valuable just having even a few more knobs is, because it allows you to open up stuff like having an ADSR versus an AHR. I mean, they could make like shift values or let you switch into from ADHR to ADSR on the SP404 Mark II, but it's not there right now, so can't do it. This is a big one. Backing up on the SP404 Mark II, super easy. You just back up to your SD card. You take the SD card, toss it in your computer. You can export backups of the whole system. You can export projects. You can export samples. Super easy. And there's the built-in app that you can get. I don't really care for it that much, but I mean, there's the app that you can get on your computer, which will allow you to do a lot of the same work, but over your USB cable. But I mean, SD card, this is amazing. On the P6, this is a real nightmare to work with. To back up each bank of samples, and remember, each pad is 3 seconds. So we're talking about a bank that has 6 samples that are 3 seconds. We're talking about, what is that, 18 seconds worth of sample time. I have to basically turn off and then turn on, holding a button combination, the P6, so I can load each bank. I then have to back up each bank individually, and it is just a real pain. And worse, the projects are in a separate button combination to boot up. So you actually have to boot up and shut down 9 times to be able to back up your entire Roland P6. It's a chore and a half to work with and get it backed up. For that reason, I pretty much don't bother backing up unless I'm like, want to post something on Patreon for folks to go get access to and play with. I don't even think I've done it with the P6 yet, but it is not fun. It is a pretty terrible experience. And like, if you're just looking to use this as a notepad, super easy. Just delete whatever you're using and be done with it. Or use it, delete afterwards, be done with it, and it's gone. If you're using this as a primary device to do sound design and work and saving your environment, I feel for you. I don't think it's that fun. Yeah. In that space as well, there was something else I was just thinking here on that, and I'm completely spacing it. Well, anyway, I'm just going to move on. If I think about it again, I'll come back to it. Just for working with the interfaces, the SP404 Mark II, and I think it's a valid complaint. There's a lot of like 2 or 3 button combinations that you need to remember. Or, I mean, I did like the quick start or the quick reference guide to try and help folks out. You can download it for free, but there's a lot of button combinations that you need to know. And if you want to do everything, you want to get like really advanced with the SP404 Mark II. It is a valid complaint and concern. That said, I don't think the P6 necessarily makes this any better. There are still a good amount of multi-button combinations that you have to know to get through and operate this. And to make it even more annoying, there's a lot of menu diving. So, and this display only gives you 5 characters worth of information. So, you know, if you're trying to come in here, you're like, well, it's even like 4 characters. So you got lo-fi, poly, mono, whatever. Great. But if I want to come in and I hit enter, it's like, well, we got 70. What am I entering? Well, I know I hit the lo-fi button, but it's like, okay, what am I editing? I don't know. It's very easy to get into that. If you hold shift and menu, you can see there's like all kinds of, get my finger out of the way, like stop, S channel, G channel. Like you have to know what all of these things are. And this is just one of the menus. You get menus for the sample pads. You get menus for your global menu. You've got menus for step components. Like it just goes on, like the mixer, router. There's like all kinds of stuff that if you don't know it's there, you're going to have a really hard time trying to find it. And even if you do know it's there, you have to know what this little tiny display is trying to convey for information to you. So I can see this being very frustrating for people. I have thought of doing a quick reference for the P6 similar to the SP404 Mark II. I just haven't gotten around to it. But I don't know, like it can be frustrating, is just what I'll say. Like that's why I reach for the menu frequently. And I remember what I was going to say. So when I was talking about the backups and saving, the SP404 Mark II, like every change that you make, for the most part, it will be writing it out pretty much all the time. So if you make changes to patterns, it will be saved. I mean, there's like levels of undo and things, but you're pretty much always moving forward. So besides like, I've made a couple knob changes and I shut the device down. Those knob changes may not get saved. Actually, they don't get saved without pressing a button combination, yet another one. But yeah, the SP404 Mark II is very good about saving state for just about everything. The P6 is pretty terrible at this. So it's very easy to go do you program in your pattern, you got everything in, you just turn off the P6, you turn it back on, you're like, where's my pattern? Well, the thing you have to know, I mean, there is a little right here is you have to go shift right, and then you have to say, do I want to do everything? Do I want to do pad? Do I want to be doing patterns, pattern all, effect? Like, what are you saving? Good question. But if you don't remember to save, it will not save most everything. But it will, however, save whatever the sample is in the slot. So it can get really confusing to understand what and why it is saving. But like, it'll save the sample, but if I go make this change to turn gate off, if I go turn this off and then turn it back on, you're going to go do like all the sound design. You're like, what the heck happened? So, I mean, you'll see in a second here, gate's back on. I just turned it off, but it didn't save it. So if I want to go and save it with gate off, I have to go turn it off, go shift right. I'll just say all. It's saved it. I mean, it's pretty quick, but to have to go do this kind of boot, reboot, and check and verify, I can understand it just being very frustrating for folks. So see, now it's off. If I turn it back on, cool, but it won't save that state change unless, again, I go shift and right and hit all and then enter to do it. So it's kind of I don't know. I could just see it being a little frustrating. What else do we have here? Yes. We have 10 banks of pads, which is pretty generous. With 16 pads per bank, that gets you 160 samples and 160 patterns per project. The P6 on the flip side has we have the 6 pads across 8 banks, so you get 48 samples at 3 seconds. That's not you can do a lot with it, but it's not a whole lot. And you've also only got 4 pattern banks that you can go work with. So you got 16 patterns across 4 banks, 64 patterns, 48 samples. So that's cool, but there also is no concept of a project in the P6. So you get what you get, and that's all you have. Whereas on the SP404 Mark II, you have, as well as having the 10 banks with 16 pads each, you've got 16 projects. So just multiply that by 16. I think it's like 2,540 or something like that. It's an awful lot of patterns. It's an awful lot of samples. And you can, I mean, it's a lot of work to fill this up. I've done it like 3 times, and you got to be dedicated and interested in doing it. So like, I just never feel like I'm being worried about running out of patterns or samples or anything else on the SP404 Mark II. On the P6 though, you do have to make some of the concessions. Like, how am I going to get like a drum kit? Am I going to have like kick, snare, hat? Well, that's taking up a good portion of all of my sample time, whereas it might be better off if I go do like some of the chopped samples and work with it that way. Polyphony, pretty similar. The P-6, if I remember correctly, is 16 notes of polyphony for the samples, and then another 4 notes of polyphony for the granular. So I feel like about 20 notes of polyphony spread out a little bit there. The SP404 Mark II is 32 notes of polyphony. The way that though that we get the counting here, this is 32 notes of polyphony, but that's only if you're working in mono samples. By and large, you're going to be probably, every time you sample, it's going to be in stereo. So you have to actually actively load in mono samples off of your SD card or use the app to get the mono samples in here if you really want 32 notes of polyphony. Otherwise, just assume that this is 16 notes of polyphony and just assume that you're running everything stereo. I actually haven't done the work to see if this is 16 notes of mono or stereo, though I suspect Roland, just to make it easier, is just saying 16 notes of polyphony and just assuming that you're not going to go mono, or maybe you can't go mono. Technically, I mean, you can switch the sampling into mono. I haven't checked out to see how that works. I should do it. What else? Actually, I think that covers everything I have for notes. And surprisingly, this is a much longer video than I expected it to be at 36 minutes. I guess I'm gonna have to go through and try and put some some of the time signature things in here or something. But yeah, I hope this gives you guys a good sense of what both devices can and cannot do, and kind of, I don't know, I can't advise you for how you're going to use it or what you might use it for an environment, but I hope that gives you a sense for, what one is versus the other. Anyway, guys, thanks for stopping by. Keep making music, keep having fun. Remember, if it sounds good, it is good, and peace.